Manatee will be presenting on her works that was published in early 2022, a publication which has been widely assessed. She worked on truck-mounted application against Aedes aegypti in Manatee County Mosquito Control District. We are glad to welcome Katie, who is now my colleague at Valent Biosciences, to share her experience. Katie, over to you now.
Thank you so much. Yes, as she said, my name is Katie Williams. I will be talking today about a study that I conducted with Manatee County Mosquito Control. I was their senior research biologist at the time, and I worked closely with my coworker Samantha Ramirez and also Leanne Lake of Valent Biosciences. So basically, the reason that we wanted to do this is very similar to the other talks that you heard. Arboviruses such as dengue and Zika are always a concern in Florida, especially at the time. Approximately 77% of the locally acquired cases in Florida were acquired in 2020. But in Manatee County, our biggest concern was our pyrethroid resistance and our Aedes aegypti populations. We've done genetic testing with our Aedes aegypti, and we've done a lot of truck trials with our adulticides, and we're finding less than 10% mortality in our local populations of Aedes aegypti with certain pyrethroids that we were using. So it was really important for us to kind of figure out an effective way of targeting these mosquitoes so that we were making sure that we were, protecting public health. In addition, as we all know, Aedes aegypti populations can exploit a very large number of habitats to lay their eggs. In Manatee County, we have many villages like this. This is Cortez Village with, backyards that have bird baths, boats, crab traps, et cetera, that hold water, where Aedes aegypti are heavily populated in these areas. And our manpower just isn't enough to reach all of these target areas. So finding a way to apply, a larvicide in an effective way was really important for us. So that's why we wanted to conduct the study using the WALS approach using Vector-Bac WDG. So before we got started with the trial, we had to figure out where we were gonna test. And so we looked at our surveillance data of Aedes aegypti that we've been collecting since 2010 by setting out OV jars throughout the county. So we have about 5 or 6 sites spread throughout the county where we collect OV jars, hatch the eggs, ID the mosquitoes, et cetera. And so we have some really good data of some locations that are heavily populated with Aedes aegypti. And so for the purposes of this study, we chose Cortez Village, which is right before you get to Anna Maria Island. So as you can see here, we had 3 sites. We had our WALS treatment site. This site was approximately 23 hectares with 148 parcels that included houses with surrounding roads. And most of these parcels in this study site had the type of habitat that you saw in those previous pictures: planters, buckets, boats, rain gutters, and they tend to be abundant egg habitat for Aedes aegypti. The second study site was approximately 3,000 meters east of our treatment site. This was our untreated control site, and this is actually where Leanne Lake lives. And we use this site because we were also doing surveillance, Aedes aegypti surveillance here, and we knew that the population and the habitat was very similar to our treatment site. So we decided to go ahead and use that for our untreated control. And then our third site is where we did our open field droplet characterization before we did all of the operational field work. And this was just a 14-hectare open field farm that we used for all of our adulticide field trials at the time. So they were willing to let us use this for the day of our open field droplet characterization. The product that we used, again, we use this product for the entire study. We use Vector-Bac WDG. There's many reasons that we chose this, this type of application strategy and this product. One, the main reason being that this formulation is extremely environmentally friendly profile, OMRI certified, and because of its high target specificity. When we were telling people that we were going to be applying a product into their backyards with this big mist blower, they were very relieved to see like the product that we were using, and they were willing to let us put jars in their yards and use this product 8 times in their neighborhood. So it was the perfect product for this area, for these type of treatments for this neighborhood. So I just wanted to briefly go over the equipment that we used and kind of our setup. So we chose the A1 Super Duty larvicide mister. This is equipped with the Micronair AU5000 atomizer. The A1 comes with this, 379 liter tank, the 20 horsepower Honda engine, and also it comes set up with the Micronair set at 55 degrees with this 20 mesh screen. And just for purposes of this study, our application rate was 0.5 pounds per acre. We were looking for a flow rate of 3 gallons per minute, and we used a 12% mix. So that was, for each application, we were able to use just 25 pounds of product with 25 gallons of water. And then on this other picture, you can see our mixing station. This was a homemade mixing station that we made using 1 or 2 inch bulkhead through holes with PVC extension, ball valves, and PVC 90-degree angle pipes. We used 3 different hoses and hose couplings, a water pump, we had to buy the water pump separately, and then a 50-gallon rain barrel. And basically what we did with this mixing station is we filled it with the 25 gallons of water, and then we slowly poured the product in, turned the water pump on, and then this agitated the product before putting it into the tank of the A1 mister. So we could make sure that it was in solution and ready to go when we're ready for operational application. So before we got ready for the operational applications, the 8 applications, we wanted to make sure that our equipment was calibrated properly, that we had the appropriate droplet size for this study, so that we would know that we were ready to go on the night of our first application. So how we did this, as I said, we did this in an open field setting. We characterize our droplets using Backdrop software, which is a software program developed by VBC, by Banu. And we set out CD cases that with chroma code cards clipped onto them. And those are the cards that we use to collect the droplets. Next to those chroma code cards, we placed dry bioassay jars. And for the purposes of the droplet characterization, we mixed the product with red food dye. And so this was so that we could get the images of the droplets on the cards to analyze them. We set up 3 rows so that we would have 3 replicates. So we had rows A, B, and C, and they were approximately 30 meters apart. And then we set them up for a 300-foot or a 91-meter swath. We also monitored weather the day of this operational or open field droplet characterization just using a weather tracker. And we set up 5 control stations upwind of the spray path. Once we were ready to go, we set the truck up perpendicular to that spray path. As you can see here in this figure, we started driving 200 feet before the first line and 200 feet after the last line, just to ensure that we were getting, our droplets throughout the entire spray grid. We waited for 10 minutes just to kind of let those chromocoat cards dry so that we could, bring them back to the lab and analyze them. Then we collected the jars, put the lids on, collected those to bring those back to the lab. The first thing we did back at the lab was fill these bioassay jars with 100 milliliters of reverse osmosis water, along with 17 to 20 L2, L3 lab-reared Aedes aegypti. And we monitored for mortality in those jars up to 48 hours. And then Leanne did the droplet analysis using the backdrop program. And in the next slide, I was just going to briefly go over what that entails. So for the purposes of for WALS applications, it requires a really unique droplet size and able to, reach the habitats that we're trying to reach. And we're trying to apply this product, and we want it to go over fences and houses, through canopy into cryptic habitats. So you have to have a specific droplet size. So we're looking in the range of extremely fine to fine. So that's around 30 to 235 microns. We use these cards that I was talking about, the chromocoat cards. We scan them using a ScanSnap scanner, and we analyze them using backdrop, and that gives us our overall VMD and NMD. And so once we were done with our open field characterization, we knew that our equipment was set and ready to go for our operational trials. So our operational trials consisted of a total of 8 BTI applications. We started in June and worked through August 2020. Our first 4 applications were conducted weekly, and then we conducted 4 applications bi-weekly. All of our applications were conducted at the same time in the evening around 9 o'clock. They usually took about 30 minutes for that one neighborhood to apply this product. We used a fixed route, as you can see here. We hit every street, every corner, everything you could get, so that we were ensuring that we were, hitting from both sides, because wind is a factor in hitting the targeted application sites. And we also monitored weather using a nearby booster tower so that we could determine what the wind speed and wind direction and temperature was. And this is just a great picture of what the spray looked like when they were applying. Ooh. This is what our operational trial setup looks like. So in our treatment site, we used 20 residential parcels. So those are these pictures up top. In each individual parcel, we had, before application, we put 2 bioassay jars in, so for a total of 40 jars. We put a jar in the front yard and then 1 jar in the backyard, in different types of coverage, which I'll show in the next slide, I believe. We also included 15 OV jars and did landing rate counts in these areas. And we set 10 BG Sentinel-2 traps in the treatment area. And then in our control site, we did 10 residential parcels with 1 bioassay jar in each, so a total of 10 bioassay jars. And then we also conducted surveillance in that area with 10 OV jars and landing rate counts and 10 BG Sentinel-2 traps. So basically, this is what our surveillance looks like. So we were collecting data on eggs, so collecting OV trap data once a week. And how we do this is we use little black jars, and we place a piece of seed germination paper clipped into the little black jar. We fill that with reverse osmosis water that has been mixed with a 3-to-2 liver yeast slurry as an attractant. Weekly, we would collect those egg papers and count larvae in the jars. We would bring the egg papers back to the lab, hatch them in bottle breeders. We would record the adults and also identify the adults. We also ID'd larvae in the field. So what we were looking for here was Aedes aegypti. We did get a lot of culex in these jars. We did not include those in our data because we were mostly looking for Aedes aegypti numbers. And then for our adults, again, we used the BG Sentinel-2 traps that were lured with the BG lures. We set these once a week. We set them for 24 hours on a fixed day, collected them, and identified the species in the traps. In addition to that, we did landing rate counts twice a week. And for Aedes aegypti, in Manatee County, we do 3-minute landing rate counts just because aegypti tend to be a little bit more hesitant to land right away compared to a nuisance mosquito. I had mentioned this in a previous slide. So these were the coverage types that we used for our trial. So we used 4 different coverage types, and we picked these randomly for each parcel. So we had the exposed to sky, completely exposed, our dense vegetation cover, our sparse vegetation cover, and then completely obstructed from the sky. So under tables, under houses, etc. For each application, so each application night prior to, we would bring and put out the jars in the homes. So we would go probably, sometime in the afternoon and leave the open jars in a fixed location. And then we would leave them out overnight. So the truck would apply at around 9 o'clock, and then we would pick up at 8 a.m. the next morning. We would bring the jars back to the lab, and again, we would fill those with 100 milliliters of reverse osmosis water. We would close the jar, shake them just to kind of suspend that BTI, and then we would add 17 to 20 L2, L3 lab-reared Aedes aegypti. We would monitor for larval mortality in these jars for 1, 3, 24, and 48 hours after infestation. And we did include any larvae that could not resurface or didn't react to prodding, we considered as dead for this study. So here are the results for all of the stuff we did. This is the results for our open field droplet characterization. And this is just showing you our, droplet size VMD for row A, B, C. This is just our average droplet size. And you can see here, right in the sweet spot, 185, 157, 238 micrometers. So we had some good droplet sizes. So we knew we were right in the wheelhouse for our calibration. We were ready to go. And here you see, our droplet density throughout that spray line. So that's 0 to 300 feet or 91 meters. Our droplet density kind of changed throughout. So that's the data that we used to determine that we were ready for our operational applications. We also did, for that open field characterization, the larval bioassays, and got some really good mortality at 48 hours. So this is row A, B, and C. As you can see here, we had around 70 to 100% mortality when our VMD was around 158 to 218. We had, some, not a lot, but some areas with little to no mortality. And that was when our droplet sizes were a little too small or a little too large. But overall, you can see total out to 91 meters, we had around 70% mortality for all 3 rows. And then here in the beginning, 9 to, I believe, 46 meters, we had 100% mortality throughout. So we know the product is killing our mosquitoes. We're, doing really well. So, and here you can see our larval bioassay results for our operational studies. So each little table is for each application. So here are the first 4 applications that were weekly. You can see that there's, pretty good mortality. This is in the field, and this is all the different coverage types. So you've got your covered, dense, exposed, and sparse. So we're looking at 70, 80% mortality in these areas, some up to 90. Overall, our treatment site showed, with a complete average, 77 plus or minus mortality compared to our untreated control site that had 0.21% mortality. So, the applications were reaching the jars, reaching over the houses, getting into those cryptic habitats, which was really good to see. And we did do, some analysis to show that there was actually no significant difference in mortality among the different coverage types. Again, we also wanted to check out, was our population decreasing over time with these 8 applications? And as I said, we, looked at BG sentinel trap counts, specifically female Aedes aegypti, and also landing rate counts. We did have a few things that happened, that kind of hampered some of our stuff. We would have preferred a longer baseline, without the applications. We only had a 2-week baseline here. That's because this was during COVID. So we were actually not at work the month before we started this. So we got back to work and just, hit the ball rolling. So we had to work quick. So usually we would have probably had a 4-week baseline here. Additionally, this season was extremely dry. We had, low rainfall compared to previous seasons. So I think we would have even seen a bigger difference in the control and treatment sites, if not for that. And then our control sites, since we weren't applying there, we did get some service requests for adults, for our people to come in and do some adulticide spraying. So in our control site, we did have some Delta Guard applications throughout that trial that may have decreased that population a little bit, where we wouldn't have seen that otherwise. But all in all, we did see a significant difference in the BG female counts in our treatment site compared to our control. And same for our landing rate counts. We saw a significant difference in the population dynamics in our WALS treated area compared to our control. So we were pretty happy with the results that we got, despite the lower rainfall and lower population numbers that we typically have. So in conclusion, we found that these WALS applications with this A1 mister were effective at reducing disease-carrying mosquito populations in this area specifically, using this product, especially being implemented with an integrated vector management program. So, we didn't apply any adulticide during this time, but, we actually didn't need to. As you can see here, our residents in the Cortez area, in our treatment area, were extremely happy with the results that they received in their neighborhood. We got numerous people telling us how happy they were that it was completely different than it has been in previous years. And so we were pretty pleased with that and happy that they were happy. And if you need more detail on this study, it is published. If you want, you just go online. You can just Google Williams et al. WALS A1 mister, and it'll pull up for you. And that's it.